Law School Secret Series Criminal Law 4 Mens Rea Focus. Welcome, glad you're here. Law school requires that you do research on your own, of course. But today we're going to try to review some of these concepts you've been studying, and one of them is expanding upon mens rea and reviewing the basic elements of a crime. For criminal for a criminal to be held criminally liable, in general, they must have the four elements of the crime: the acts rea, mens rea, concurrence, causation, and the resulting injury or crime. Now we're going to cover the aspect of the mind, the guilty mind. And again, here it is in a nutshell without a description, but note that there's exceptions to this, where you might not need one of the elements. But generally speaking, this is what you want to be looking for when you're discussing your crimes. So, mens rea or intent is proving the state of mind. The prosecutor needs to show culpability or blameworthiness, and it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. Distinguish mens rea from motive. Now, as you can see, I have MPC, general intent, specific intent, transferred intent, malice crimes, and strict liability written. This is because the common law, as we discussed in an earlier uh, review, that you're going to apply whatever law is applicable, but generally speaking, MPC does not use the general intent and the specific intent. And the transferred intent is kind of like legal fiction that was borrowed from torts, and it's applied a little bit differently in crimes. Now, strict liability, of course, you're going to be held liable for the crime regardless of what your intent was. So this is an exception to the rule, the general element of this crime, and there's going to be exceptions to other elements as well. So, Regina versus Holson was an early English case on bigamy, and part of it was the state of mind for criminal liability. And it's one of the earlier times in case law or the foundations of discussing how that applies. Another important case you might want to look at is Morissette versus United States. If you haven't already looked at it, it was a federal case. A guy picked up some scrap metal that was in heaps on some government land. He used to go out in nature there, and he turned it in for money, because you can pick up the metal and they'll melt it back down and reuse it. And he was charged with larceny or theft and convicted. But on appeal, as this is an appeals case, he used the argument of his mental state, and he said that he did not intend to, and the judge looked at the crime as and the code, the federal law code, and it was section 641, and he was saying that there's no mention of that, and the common law, I guess, definition and other, well, the case law would be that he would he didn't need to show intent. In other words, it was abandoned property, as he argued, and he didn't have the intent. Anyhow, he got it overturned, and this is going to be kind of like setting a precedent for federal cases. in that fact. So now with the model penal code, you've got purposely, knowingly, recklessly, negligently. Your culpability is in the combination of the mens rea, conduct, circumstances, and the results. Now, Fond and Singer wrote, in an attempt to define mens rea, courts divided and combined the legislative terms into three major concepts: intent, knowledge, recklessness. And then Lowy goes on to say that the MPC rejects the traditional terminology such as specific intent and general intent, contending that there are four separately recognizable states of mind: purposeful, knowing, reckless, and negligent. So, with other mens rea concepts, you're going to look at words like attendance, circumstances, and some crimes are going to require that. The Gilbert's Law outline was discussing that by Dix, and there's other crime categories. So, remember that when you are looking at a crime, there's a lot of factors to consider. One of them, Scienter, for example, discusses the fact that if you can prove scienter in criminal law, it cures the doctrine of void for vagueness. You know, if you can't argue that the law is too broad. Anyhow, to be continued, some other concepts you might want to review are vicarious liability and transferred intent. I may go into that next time. And here is the outer outline. It's on my other criminal law reviews, but we're working from this, but we're starting with the basic elements and expanding upon them because their application in determining um, what they mean or whether or not they actually need to be in there, because there's so many exceptions to the rule and different ways to apply the law depending on the jurisdiction, that you really need to get those little nuances down. And here is your shell for your framework to organize your work. And in the meantime, until next time, I want to thank you, and I want to show you the works cited. And as always, like, subscribe, and thank you so much for stopping by.